so it's not the in thing to say. So they'll just say, well, the temple represents the Old Testament, and of course we know that's just a code word for the Torah. And since the Torah is obsolete and decaying and old and aging and ready to be done away with, the Old Covenant is obsolete, the tabernacle system is obsolete, the sacrificial system is obsolete. But here we have a revolution. You say you want a revolution when... Here we have a revolution. I propose to you, brothers and sisters, that the temple represents, listen, both the old and the renewed covenant.
That's right. I believe that. Yes.
It is a parable of what Yahweh will do through time. If you let it speak to you, it's a parable. If you let it speak to you, it's a parable. Watch this. Unlike Christian teaching, where the temple itself represents the Old Testament, the Tanakh, the revolution that we are starting here, and that we are fortifying, is that the temple does not represent the Torah or the Old Covenant. Rather, it contains both covenants as allegorized in the holy place and in the most holy place. Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness?
Amen. Hallelujah.
YP, are you with me? We got to be. YP, are you with me? You Spanish folks, just sit there and try to grasp it. Just smile. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Now let's take a look. Let me prove my point. So according to the author of Ivrim, Rashul, there were how many parts to the tabernacle? The protos, the first part, and the deutros, the second part. Let's read verse 4 and 5. These are parables. What's the parable? Verse 4. Here it is, the Kadosh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, in the ancient temple in Har Moriah, Mount Moriah, had the golden censer, the Ark of the Testimony, covered on all sides with gold, had the golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the 2 tablets of the Eidut, or of the testimony. And over it were the cherubim of Tiferet, shadowing the mercy seat, of which things we now won't speak in great detail. And then verse 6, when these things were prepared, the Kohanim went into the Makom Kadosh, the tent of meeting, performing the services twice a day. But into the Kadosh HaKadoshim went the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest, alone on Yom Kippur, once every year, with dam, blood, which he offered for himself, and the sins of the people. The Ruach HaKodesh was showing through a parable that the way into the Makom Kadosh, the holy place, was not yet manifest for us, because we were in Kohanim. The Ruach HaKodesh was showing that the way into the Makom Kadosh was not yet prepared because Yeshua hadn't come and we were not Kohanim. Most of us don't have Levitical blood. Correct? Correct? So the Ruach HaKodesh was showing that the way for us into the holy place had not yet been prepared. Correct? Correct. Turn your neighbor and say, correct. Correctamente. Correcto type. Now watch this. Now I'm going to prove to you. Now wait a second. This was a parable to show us that the way into the holy place for us as believers by the blood of Yeshua hadn't come yet, hadn't arrived yet. This parable was to show us that at that time it hadn't arrived yet. Wait a second. If the protos, or the first, what? Sanctuary, was a parable, it was a parable of the what? First covenant. And the Kadosh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, was a parable or a metaphor or an allegory of a coming kingdom, or the Mashiach's rule and reign on earth from Yerushalayim. And the kingdom hasn't come yet. Yeshua's not ruling and reigning from Yerushalayim. That must mean we're in the first place, this present age, or the first covenant. But in order to establish the second, he had to remove the first. Let's continue. Inside the Kadosh HaKadoshim was the golden incense, on which the high priest burned incense on Yom Kippur. Inside the Kadosh HaKadoshim was the Ark of the Covenant. Inside the Ark was the golden vessel of what? Manna, iron's rod that budded, and it had the tables of the Ten Commandments. Remember, the Kadosh HaKadoshim, don't lose me now, the Kadosh HaKadoshim corresponds to what? The protos, place, or the deuteros? Notice the word place is not even there. I've added the word place. The word place isn't there. The word dispensation isn't there. The word covenant isn't there. The word time isn't there. It just reads first, second, first, second, first, second. Any other word is mere explanation, commentary. Like Rabbi Akiva said, love Yahweh with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Everything else in the Torah is commentary. That sounds familiar. Love Yahweh with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Everything else is commentary. That sounds familiar. Yeah, but Rabbi Akiva, who lived at the time of Yeshua, was already teaching that by the time Yeshua showed up. Yeshua borrowed a lot of teachings from other rabbis. I shouldn't say he borrowed it, but he coordinated a lot of his teaching with other rabbinical schools of that time. The only difference is they were born of a woman. He descended to be born of a woman. He started up there. They started down here. That was the only difference. He was the greatest rabbi who ever lived. You don't believe he started up there and was born down here. He had to find a womb to birth himself into the world. Because in Micah 5:2, written 500 years before Yeshua was born, it says, "But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are the smallest of the cities of Yehuda, out of you shall he come forth to me, who is to rule in Israel, whose going forth has been from old, from everlasting." Mekedem and Mututav Me'olam in Hebrew, meaning his birth didn't start in Bethlehem. He's arriving in Bethlehem from eternity. Mekedem and Mututei Olam, for the days of eternity. He leaves the days of eternity to arrive in Bethlehem to be your Savior. But his teaching corresponded to the rabbis of his day. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Now watch this. This will blow your mind. Now if the Kadosh HaKadoshim corresponds to the what? The Deuteros, the second. I shouldn't even say place, right? The word place and covenant is not in the scriptures. The second. It corresponds to the second. How significant that if the Kadosh HaKadoshim corresponds to the what? Second or the what? Kingdom or the Messianic age or the Atid Lavo, right? How significant these items that are in this parable of the Deuteros. What do we find? We find the incense of the high priest on Yom Kippur, representing the prayer and intercession of what? The Kedoshim. We also find the Ark of the Covenant. What is the Ark a symbol of? What does the Ark of the Covenant represent? Pardon me. What does the Ark of the Covenant represent? Right, the throne of Yahweh. His ark surrounded by angels. His throne surrounded by angels. Very good. And, listen, what else do we find? The cherubim, the cherubim, the cherubim, who guard the way to the tree of life, and the throne of the Most High. Right there in the Deuteros, or the Kadosh HaKadoshim, what else do we find? The jar of manna representing what? The word of Yahweh that came down from heaven. Yeshua said, your fathers, Israel, ate bread, the manna, in the wilderness, and they are dead. He that eats of the bread that I shall give him shall never die. I am the bread that came down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and never taste death.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Do you believe this?
Yes.
So that jar of manna in the Holy of Holies represented the word of Yahweh that descended from on high in Shemot chapter 17. Very good. Glad you knew that. Shemot chapter 17 and 16, actually. There in Deuteros, or the second, not place, not covenant, in Deuteros, in this second, represented by the Kadosh HaKadoshim, we find what else? Rivka, what else do we find? Aaron's rod that blossom. What is the blossoming of a dead stick symbolic of? Life or resurrection. The resurrection of those in the age to come. if that second coming thing, all these things that are found in the Messianic age when Yeshua returns to rule and reign from Jerusalem, these are things that are going to be found. Now wait a second. Not only is Aaron's rod symbolic of resurrection of the believers in the second age, in Hebraic understanding, how many ages are there? This age and that age. You want to be saved and live forever? No problem. Accept Yeshua's forgiveness in this age, and you'll be promoted to the next age. In Christianity, channel 421 charts. There was the age of the garden, the age of innocence. But then Adam and Eve fell into the age of guilt. And then was the age of Noah and the Diluvian age. Then there was the antediluvian age, followed by the post-Diluvian age. After the post-Diluvian age, there was the age of concupiscence. So after that age, Yahweh found the Jews. He chose Abraham. It was the age of the Jews. Then the Jews rejected Christ, and then began the church age. Then the church is going to be raptured, yeah, right? Then begins the second Jewish age. And then after listen, now after the second Jewish age will be the new age, and Shirley MacLaine will be Mashiach. Get out! And you'll be able to buy pet rocks for $9.99 on sale. You and I go into a diner, we can sit there like an idiot. Pardon the expression. Can't even decide what to order. Sweetheart, should I order pancakes, grits, or toast? What do you have? Whole wheat? Rye? Bagels? 1 minute, just give me a minute. And we're going to figure out when one time ends and the next time begins. When this age begins and the next age begins, the age of law and then the age of grace. How about something a lot simpler? Now, then, here, then. You're forgiven now, you get to inherit then. Protos, deuteros. Protos, deuteros. Protos. Yahweh knows we're children of Israel. We're not Einsteins of Israel. Did Yahweh call us the Einsteins of Israel? We're children of Israel. Now, then. Oh. You mean that's what time is? Yep. That's what time is. You want to be a then child? Be a now child. 2 Corinthians 6:2. Now is the day. Now is the acceptable time of salvation. You want to be a then child? You want to be a poster child then? Get saved now. We can all be poster children. But we're not the Einsteins of Yahweh. We're the children of Yahweh. Don't look at me the holy. I'm not either. There was only one Einstein. And even he respected Yeshua. And he said about the Gospels, no lie can be filled with such life. You know what Einstein said about Yeshua? No lie can be filled with such life. He was a smart guy. Smarter than a lot of Jewish people think.
They were Kabbalists. A lot of them were Kabbalists.
Shalomash, the Jewish playwright, was a believer. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Christopher Columbus was a Jewish believer. Now Columbus, Christopher Columbus.
Oh, okay.
Let's move on. Now, let's continue. But notice, now in the Holy of Holies, the Kadosh HaKadoshim, which represents the what?
Second place.
The Dutros, not place. Second something. Something. We don't know what that something is, but it's something. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. What else was in that second something? Here the Kadosh HaKadoshim. Hold on now, don't miss this. We find the 10 Commandments. In the Kadosh HaKadoshim, in that parable, what is the Kadosh HaKadoshim a parable of? The Olam Haba, not the Olam Hazeh, the Olam Haba, right smack in the middle of the new covenant or the kingdom or the messianic age, we find the 2 tablets of testimony or the Shnei Avanim Ha'edut that speak that in the millennium the Torah will be in effect. Now time out, Mr. Christian. The Torah was in effect before Jesus. The Torah will be in effect after in the Messianic kingdom, in the Messianic age. But now we're not under the Torah. That is screwy Louis theology. You got a screw loose, Bubba, and you got a bigger screw loose if you listen to preachers like that. I know I'm preaching good today. Get that on tape.
Amen.
Amen.
That's right.
That doesn't make any. Look at that. In that second, or the Deutros, was the very 10 Commandments.
Right.
Meaning that in the Messianic age will be founded and based and rooted and grounded on the 10 Commandments.
Amen. Amen.
That's a little bit different than Christian theology. The temple represents the Old Testament. It's been destroyed. It's been done away with. How about this revolution? You say you want a revolution. You say you want a revolution? How about that? The temple represented this world and that world, this age and that age, and represents both the first and second covenant. And neither can be destroyed. Because if the temple represents the first and second covenant, we know the second covenant cannot be destroyed any more than the Torah can be destroyed. My. No wonder we started early. We had to get all this in. We went over this just now. To recap, and then I'll go forward. The golden incense was what? Teaches us that the prayers continue into the what? Second age, the Olam Haba. But also that atonement is part of the new covenant. The blood of Yeshua, is it not the central part of the renewed covenant? So that golden censer teaches that Yahweh answers prayer by providing the blood of atonement even in the age to come. Notice, the Ark of the Covenant, inside the Deuteros, the very throne of Yahweh, the very presence of the Most High. It teaches us that Yahweh's presence, His throne, His Ruach are all part of the renewed covenant. The golden jar of manna. Let me take a drink. It's too good. The golden jar of manna teaches us that the prophetic word, the hidden word, the manna of life, eternal life, Yeshua Himself are components of the Olam Haba, the age to come. The rod that budded is symbolic, a parable, that Aaron's priesthood is eternal. Now you have your answer about sacrifices in the age to come. Now you have your answer. The fact that Aaron's rod budded is a sign that what? That in the Olam Haba, the Levitical priesthood will be restored and resurrected. Now Ezekiel chapters 44 to 48 make sense. Why will there be sacrifices? Because Yahweh guaranteed it. He said that rod, was that rod in the first or in the second? Aaron's rod that budded. Was it in the protos or the deutros? Meaning in the age to come, in the Messianic kingdom, Aaron's children will flourish and oversee the sacrifices of the millennial temple. Did you get that? Or am I preaching to myself today?
Oh, no, I'm being
The Levitical priesthood is part of the New Testament. What Jewish rabbi is going to teach you that? The Levitical priesthood and the Melchizedekian priesthood are both part of the Brit Chadashah. This is amazing stuff. And represents resurrection, the resurrection for the age to come, the Olam Haba. The 10 Commandments, my goodness. In the Kadosh HaKadoshim. Teach us, oh, get this. Please turn to your neighbor and say, this get. Oh, just try a different neighbor. Try and say, get this. Now go back to the old neighbor and say, this get. Now go back to that second neighbor and say, get this get. Simon says, who's on first? The 10 Commandments are in the what? Deutros or the protos? In the second parabolic teaching, meaning Torah is part of the renewed covenant.
Amen.
It's not in the holy place, it's in the Holy of Holies. The Torah is part of the new covenant. Isn't that what Yahweh said in Jeremiah 31:31? Behold, the days come to say of Yahweh, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, Jewish and non-Jewish Israel. I will forgive their sins, and I will put my Torah in their hearts, and they will teach this man his neighbor, saying no more, saying no Yahweh, for they will all know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will forgive their sin and remember their iniquity no more. I will put my Torah in their heart. And this, if we had believed that the temple was a parable of both covenants, that the whole purpose of the Messianic age is to put Yahweh's Torah in our hearts, not to nail it to the cross.
Amen. Amen.
Have you read Ezekiel 36? Then, in the Messianic age, they will keep my commandments and do my statutes and guard my chukim and guard my mishpatim, and then I will mikvah them and pour the cold water, the purifying water of mikvah on those who keep my chukim and guard my mishpatim.
Amen. Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Now, if you want the traditional Christian interpretation of this, you'll be as lost as you were the day you came in here. Well, the temple represents the Torah. The temple represents the Old Testament. You ever notice how the nose goes up? They can't just say Old Testament. The temple represents the Old Testament. Don't you know, Rabbi, it's been done away with, proven by the fact that it was destroyed. But if we believe the book of Hebrews, the temple represented both covenants. Now what do we do? That'll change your theology. That'll change it in a heartbeat. The cheruvim symbolized what? That the way back to the tree of life, the way to eternal life, was through the blood and obedience to the Torah.
Amen.
The tree of life was there to remind you that this tree of life represents the coming Messianic age, and in that age you'll find the Lamb who died for you and his Torah commandments to keep you submitted to his goodness.
Amen. Amen.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Now let's go and take a look inside the protos. Is anyone enjoying?
Amen.
Just other than the first two rows. Is anybody else enjoying?
Amen.
Rows 3 through 8. Aren't you happy you have season tickets? Just think if you hadn't bought season tickets, somebody else would be sitting in your seat. Turn to your neighbor and say, I've got season tickets. What season? In season and out of season. And what's the box score? It's 7-7-7 to nothing. Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Now wait a second. But even the protons had a menorah. Even the protons had a shulchan. Even the protons had an incense altar, the laver of incense, and the altar of sacrifice. Look at verse 1. Hebrews 9:1. Truly the first, not place, brick, covenant, or anything else, truly the first blank had orders of service. What was there? Whatever was there represented needful things, things that were necessary for this what? Olam Hazeh, for the present age. Whatever we find in the first, representing the what? Olam Hazeh, or the current age, must be useful to us in our earthly existence. What was in the Holy of Holies is what will be in the Messianic kingdom forever. Hello?
Okay.
So whatever we find, listen, don't miss this. Whatever we find in the first, not place or covenant, the first, Olam HaZeh, look at verse 9, they were parables of the time present. Where was the high priest, where were the priests conducting their sacrifices? In the first place. Symbolic of the present. Where were they offering gifts and sacrifices? In the protos, symbolic of the present. And even though they were doing this, they weren't providing a perfect sacrifice or perfect service, and their consciences, even though they were ministering for us, their consciences were full of sin and guilt, and they couldn't be removed even from their own conscience. So whatever they were doing in that first place couldn't remove our sins, let alone their guilty conscience. Is this too hard for you? Now watch this. Whatever we find in the first will represent needful things in this earthly present world. Or the, lack of a better term, first covenant, first testament. The altar of sacrifice is necessary pertaining to sin, the shedding of blood, daily forgiveness of Yahweh in this life. The laver, the bronze laver, which holds the water, pertains to bodily purification. Will our bodies need to be purified in the age to come? No, because we'll have our new, physical, resurrected, and glorified bodies. When does our bodies need to be purified in mikvah? When do we have to undergo cleansing and mikvah of our bodies, our purification? In this age, in this life. In the age to come, we won't need a mikvahs. The menorah, this is the menorah, as Christianity calls it, candelabra. Sounds like something out of a Betty Davis movie. Please take that out of your vocabulary. Lampstand. Really? Can I find it in aisle 3 or aisle 4? I'm looking for a lampstand. No, darling. You have to have it imported from Trinidad. You can't find it in aisle 3. Let's try this. This is better. Menorah. I like that. I like that. Menorah. And don't worry if you're offended. I offended everybody sooner or later. Just please stick around with your box seats. Season tickets. Everybody will be offended sooner or later. Where are we here? The menorah. The menorah. Where are we here? The menorah, listen, the menorah pertains to the illumination of righteousness in this dark world. Where is the menorah? In the protos or the deutros? It's in the protos. Where do we need temporal light? In this world. It's a dark world. It's a sick world. It's a sin-cursed world.